Welcome to Happening Multicultural Festival 2023. My name is Bänoo and I'm the poetry curator. We recognize that we live and work on the traditional indigenous territories. Muse Arts, the organization that brings you the Happening Multicultural Festival, is located on the traditional territories of Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit. I am now in Edmonton, Alberta, which is located on the traditional territory of Cree, Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, and Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Anishinaabe nations. As newcomers, refugees, and immigrants, we honor all the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who have been living on the land since time immemorial. Happening Multicultural Festival is the first and only Toronto festival created by community artists, giving center stage to the talent and skills of immigrant, newcomer, and refugee artists. It embraces the cultural richness of our city and creates professional development opportunities for artists. It offers a platform for organizations to connect and to form meaningful collaborations. During our poetry nights, we celebrate poets who, among other things, identify as newcomers, refugees, or immigrants. Throughout the first 3 Thursdays in May, there will be an online poetry event featuring 3 poetry readings. Despite the fact that poetry inhabits many geographical locations and speaks in different languages and accents, literature continues to be the most exclusive of arts and the most resistant against outsiders. And immigrants' linguistic, cultural, and political accents mark them as alien and hence undesirable company or colleague among fellow writers and poets. Our first poet tonight is Adriana Oniță, who is a poet, artist, educator, and researcher with a PhD in language education. She writes and teaches in English, Romanian, Spanish, French, and Italian. As founding editor of the Polyglot, Adriana is proud to have published more than 200 writers and artists working in over 55 languages. Her recent multilingual poems appear in CBC Books, The Globe and Mail, and Tint Journal. She's also the author of 2 chapbooks, Misremembered Proverbs from Above Ground Press, forthcoming in 2023, and Conjugated Light from Glass Buffalo in 2019. Adriana works as editorial director for the Griffin Poetry Prize and lives between Edmonton and Sicily. You can discover her work at her website, adrianaoniță.com.
Hi everyone, my name is Adriana Oniță and I'm thrilled to be a part of Happening Multicultural Festival. Mulțumesc to Muse Arts and to Bänoo for inviting me to participate and share some of my multilingual poems. I'm currently based here in Amiskwachí, Huascahican, or Edmonton, where it's April and it's currently snowing, but I was born in Romania. So the poems I will share with you today move between Romanian and English, and they all attempt to translate interesting proverbs or words from my mother tongue. The first poem is called Țara arde și baba se piaptănă. The country is on fire and the old woman is brushing her hair. And this is a proverb that has echoed throughout my life. As a child, I wondered, why is Baba brushing her hair? That question really prompted this poem. Țara arde și Baba se piaptănă. The country is on fire and the old woman is brushing her hair because she can't smell the smoke, because she's combing out the flames, because her country is a rough draft, because she set fire to the country, because she's seen it all, because she knows rain is coming, because she won the war, because she lost her children in the war, because she wanted to become proverb, because she is the library about to burn, because her body is bait. Țara arde and she can't smell the smoke. Țara arde and she's combing out the flames. Țara arde and her country is a rough draft. Țara arde and she set fire to the country. Țara arde and she's seen it all. Țara arde and she knows rain is coming. Țara arde and she won the war. Țara arde and she lost her children in the war. Țara arde and she wanted to become proverb. Țara arde and she is the library about to burn. Țara arde and her body is bait. Țara arde și Baba se piaptănă. It's still my favorite proverb. I picture women all over the world, mama, mamaye, mimi, holding on to a routine to survive destruction. The mere act of combing out hair, a comfort amidst chaos, amidst wildfires and wars raging. I can't smell the smoke yet, but both countries inside me are burning. The next poem is about unearthing a strigoi. What is a strigoi? Think zombie meets vampire meets ghost meets your pervasive anxiety. It uses found text by Mircea Mitica, which I translated into English. And I also juxtapose between the Romanian and English texts some reflections and autobiographical notes in the middle. Strigoi. Inima lui a fost vie când i-am luat-o din el. Am băgat-o într-o pungă de un leu de celofan. His heart was beating when I took it out of him. I put it in a cheap cellophane bag. A man rises din mormântul lui. A man, mort sau viu. Am spus să mergem la cimitir. Am mers la miezul nopții. Eu merg la orice oră din noapte la cimitir și nu mi-e frică. I said, let's go to the cemetery. We went at midnight. I go to the cemetery at any time of night. I'm not afraid. A man follows me every day. He says, e una coincidenza. He walks through water to reach the spot where I paint un descântec. Nu mi-e frică. I'm not afraid. A man takes decades to die. I have his cheekbones. La 12 noaptea l-am dezgropat. În 5 minute s-a schimbat la față. Era roșu, barba începuse să-i crească. At midnight, we unburied him. Within 5 minutes, his face changed, red. His beard started growing. Strig. A man says, nu striga, nu sunt strigoi. Am găsit sânge proaspăt pe partea stângă, în colțul gurii. Când am tăiat, înăuntru avea baltă de sânge, sânge proaspăt, neînchegat. I found fresh blood in the corner of his mouth, on the left side. When I cut him open, there was a pond of blood inside. Fresh blood, unclotted. A man takes decades to die. After he dies, I carpet myself in braids of garlic. L-am tăiat cu furca pe piept și i-am luat inima. I cut his chest with a pitchfork and took out his heart. A man cuts entire generations. Tata, tataie, taie. Îi desfaci coastele ca să poți să iei inima, că altfel nu ai cum. You open the ribs to take out the heart. There's no other way. A man, mort sau viu, în Jilava, Wedgwood, Cefalu. Does it matter where? Am dus inima la o răscruce. Am făcut focul și înfit-o furcă. I took the heart to a crossroads. I made a fire, pitchfork in heart. I bury my men cu o piatră în gură, a piece of iron under the tongue. Am venit acasă. Am făcut focul în bătătură pe tablă. Am făcut o scrum, am pisat-o și am făcut ceai. Și am dat fetii să bea. I came home. I built a fire on a board. I made the hard ashes, ground it up, made tea, and I gave it to the girl to drink. So after I wrote that poem, I couldn't write for 5 whole months. I felt possessed by a strigoi. So what happens when a poem itself turns into a strigoi? The next poem attempts to address that, and it is called Lămurire. And if you use Google Translate for Lămurire, it gives you explanation. But of course, Lămurire is more of an explanation. It's more of a revelation, one that can lead to new awakenings. So only poetry can do this word justice at the end of the day. Lămurire. I carpet myself in braids of garlic. May, June, July, August, September. Cast, veil, shrewd, sheath, descântec. Every day I carry the poem to a crossroads. I make a fire. I make the poem ashes, grind it up, make tea, and I drink. After strigoi, I haven't written a word. It boils in my rib, clots in my throat. I carpet myself in braids of garlic. Mai, iunie, iulie, august, septembrie. După strigoi, n-am scris niciun cuvânt. Sure, I arrange the vase with fresh lalele. I allow the light to translate lumina sufrageriei, a piece of iron under the tongue. Beau, ceaiul de scrum. I wait. A poem takes months to die. After it dies, mă acoper cu funii de usturoi împletite. It's not enough. A poem is not always catharsis. It's grave, veil, knot, shrewd, suture. May, June, July, August, September. A man takes decades to die after he dies. Nu mi-e frică. Nu mi-e frică. Adevărul este că am venit acasă. Am făcut focul în bătătură pe tablă. I am the one who made the heart ashes. I ground it up. I made the tea. Am dereticat prin casă. Am citit cuvintele altora. Septembrie, august, iulie, iunie, mai. Am făcut mămăliguță, am aprins lumânări, am muncit cu râvnă, lucrat cu zel, m-am și îmbrăcat în ia stră bunicii. Iar cuvintele, scrum, praf în burtă. A strigoi takes decades to die, if it dies. I think this is my favorite poem I've ever written because after writing it, I looked at the shape and I got goosebumps. The poem itself became the crossroads I needed to get rid of the strigoi that was chasing me for those 5 months. So magically, after I wrote it, my writer's block disappeared and I felt capable and excited about writing poems again. All right. My final poem is called Palavrajală, and it is a found poem. It's a collection of verbatim comments said to me by other writers in workshop settings, via email or on the phone, regarding my use of Romanian words in my poem, in my poetry. And I find it endlessly fascinating that bilingual poetry or the incorporation of other languages always triggers so many reactions from people, particularly on this side of the pond. Palavrajală. It could just be me, but I find that the Romanian loses the reader. I was thrown off. It's not just you. I completely checked out after that middle stanza that's all in Romanian. If there were fewer Romanian words sprinkled throughout, it would be totally fine. For example, it makes sense for these nouns to be in Romanian, but the verbs and adverbs should be changed back to English. Wait, shouldn't the Romanian words appear in italics? Maybe italics would make it easier to skip over them. Why aren't there footnotes or a translation or a glossary? Not translating the Romanian seems arrogant. Personally, I would want my writing to be understood. If Romanian was a well-known language like Spanish, you could probably get away with this much code switching. Are the goals to create dissonance and ambiguity? Where's the intimacy, accessibility, clarity? I actually like that I don't know the Romanian parts. I love to hear and see the lusciousness of non-English languages. But I don't feel like I'm the audience for this poem. I don't feel invited in. I didn't translate the Romanian phrases. It was clear the author didn't want me to. I think we pretty much covered everything, but I will say that if I can't understand the poem, read it aloud, recite it, what is the point? If the goal is to unsettle, it worked. Thank you very much for listening to my poems today. I hope you enjoyed them. The sun is even out in Edmonton. I'm so happy that this festival exists, happening, Multicultural Festival. Thank you for having me. If you're looking to connect with other multilingual writers in Canada and across the world, there's also the Polyglot, which is a magazine I started in Edmonton in 2016, and we publish works in and weaving different languages. Thank you once again to Bänoo and to Muse Arts for having me, and I look forward to the rest of the happening festival.
The second poet tonight is Mansour Noorbakhsh, who writes poems and stories in both English and Farsi, his first language. His book-length poem, In Search of Shared Wishes, was published in 2017. He tries to be a voice for freedom, human rights, and environment in his writings. He presents the contemporary Canadian poets in a weekly Persian radio program, persianradio.net, or Ottawa Radio on Telegram. Mansour's poems are published in Word City and several anthologies. His poems have been translated into Greek, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, Serbian, Macedonian, Slovenian, and Chinese. Mansour Noorbakhsh is an electrical engineer. He lives with his wife and their children in Toronto, Canada.
Hello everyone. I'm delighted to be here and sharing some of my short poems with you. My name is Mansour Noorbakhsh and I'm living in Ontario, Canada with my family. First of all, I would like to say thank you to Bänoo, who has invited me to this event. And also I would like to say thank you to the coordinator and the organizer of this event happening Multicultural Festival. My first language is Persian language, Farsi, and I write in Persian language and in English language. I'm trying to be a voice for humanity, human rights, and environment in my writings because I think poetry is an amazing language to call everyone around the world to work together and make our world better and peaceful. I have published a couple of books and articles many years ago in Persian language, like this. And also I have published my book-length poem In Search of Shared Wishes in 2017 in Canada. My poetry and fictions are published in World City Literary, which is a very wonderful online magazine based in Canada with many contributors from around the world. Also, my poetry is featured and published in other places, like the publications of the Ontario Poetry Society, Versafire, a magazine, and the other anthologies and magazines. Also, I'm hosting a Persian radio program to make a cultural bridge between Persian language community, Iranian community, and the poets from Canada and other countries. So far, since 2020, I have introduced more than 80 poets from Canada and other countries in this program. My poetry is also translated and published in other languages like Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, Serbian, Macedonian, and Slovenian. In this reading session, I would like to read my 4 short poems. Each has been written about a specific human right concern in these days. My first poem, which I like to read, is dedicated to First Nation people of Canada. I wrote this poem when the mass graves of Indigenous children were discovered in Canada residential schools, and this poem is published in World City and some other places. Reality and justice. 215 children found buried on the site of what was Canada's largest Indigenous residential school. We have been playing in darkness with the covered eyes since we were children. Then I wanted to find you, for I needed to win. Floundered in the footprint of time, I need to find you, to find myself, my happiness, your love, and still in the absolute darkness. Children were told darkness is their reality. And for middle-aged, covering our eyes with a dirty handkerchief was called justice. The Morse code of victory, pacing in darkness with covered eyes, lifetime of seeking each other while they were hiding our feelings. My second poem is dedicated to Afghan people, especially to Afghan girls who are banned from education after Taliban regime. This poem is also published and featured in different places. I want to sing the bitterest romances, a prayer for Afghan people after Taliban advance in August 2021, especially dedicated to Afghan girls who are banned from education. The sunshine was nothing more than a dream in the commotion of an evening, panting the sigh of relief. Call the rain which doesn't decline hopes. I want to sing the bitterest romances, to have no one believed in any smile, and to have no one despaired for a glance. Thus, death never expects any resurrection, and soil never promises the growth of any grapevine to make us drunken. And no drunken look disturbs the peace of any stone. I want to sing the bitterest romances, so that every heart embrace sin, despite a certainty that casts a shadow over the peace of that glorifiers those buyers of lies and sellers of death, those who see purity only in the captivity of virgin girls, and seek faith only in the slavery of men in love, those who believe selling opium for buying weapon, death believers who don't trust the meaning of life. I want to sing the bitterest mourning song, as if infidels had not fought, but only against their own silence. And my third poem is dedicated to Ukrainian children who are suffered from the Russian invasion. War always makes disasters and suffering against human rights. This poem is published in an anthology dedicated to Ukrainian people compiled by David Bridges. Poets for Ukraine. Reskinned Moloch. Two Ukrainian children after Russian invasion. Has raised again his shadow with opened arms to burn the children. Though has changed, reskinned this time. Has arms are open to embrace the world, Ukraine, Europe, what else would be the next? Perhaps still I am an immature child who dreams maturity of a lovely world in every poem, innocent, unaware of plentiful pollen of immature cruelty, growing under the skin of this mushroom-shaped cloud. Perhaps I'm a child who has learned and believed Moloch is untrue, hadn't known that it can be emulated, reskinned, or it's nothing but a skin. And my last poem, the fourth poem in this reading session, is dedicated to the movement of Iranian people called Women, Life, Freedom. From September 2022, this movement has been started, and so far many young girls and boys and children have been killed, imprisoned, and tortured by Iranian regime. It is more than 4 decades that Iranian people have been denied from their basic human rights, such as freedom of speech, and even the Iranian regime has banned access to the internet many times. So I think we have to be their voice. Iranian youth. For all martyrs of women, life, freedom. I'm a generation that my days have never tolerated with me. I see you kill and tail out of justice. I see you steal and lament against oppression. I see its fall only what you make in the name of morality. I find no name for you except bandits, except tyrants. Which crypt have you come from that have no tolerance for sunshine? Where do you prostrate that makes not a bit of truth in your existence? I am the generation that won't tolerate the intolerance. Though I have nothing but my burning heart, that has raised with anger and pain against the hypocrisy that loots our moments. Thank you for listening, and stay safe, strong, and creative.
Our third poet tonight is Mohineet Kaur Boparai, who is a poet and fiction writer. She has published several books of poetry, the most recent being Beyond Thorns in 2022 by Wave and Stock Publishers in the United States, and Polychromasia in 2019 by Mawenzi House Publishers in Toronto. Her poetry has twice been nominated for the Pushcart Prize. She has been featured and interviewed by literary magazines in addition to publishing poetry in them. She is a PhD in English literature and has published literary criticism in journals and a book, The Fiction of Abdulrazak Gurnay, Journeys Through Subalternity and Agency, in 2021 by Cambridge Scholars Publishing in the UK. She is also a teacher and lives in Brampton with her family.
Hello everyone, I am Mohineet Kaur Boparai. I am a poet, an educator, and an artist. I migrated to Canada from India in 2018 and I live in Brampton currently. I've published several books of poetry. Two of the most recent ones are Polychromasia by Mawenzi House, Toronto, and this was published in 2019, and Beyond Thorns, which was published in 2022 by Griffin Poetry Publishers, USA. When I migrated to Canada, I could not write poetry for some time because I was so used to the clutter and noise of India that the sanitized and calm space of Canada left me wordless and without a voice almost. However, over time, I came to love the landscape of Canada. Whenever I would go out to a natural reserve or a forest, it would be a very welcome change from what I had been seeing in India. And slowly and gradually, poetry came back to me, and I started to write again, this time not about spaces that were cluttered, but about natural beauty, about spaces that were beautiful because of the wind rustling in the trees or the water calmly moving alongside the banks of the river. So it was an amazing experience coming here as well. I'd like to begin by reciting a poem from my book Polychromasia. Since I talked about the past and the present, I feel that it is only natural that I should start by reciting a poem that has historical significance. It's called A Poet on Vaisakhi 1919. Vaisakhi is a festival that is celebrated across India. It's a festival that's coming up, in fact. It's celebrated on the 13th of April every year because that is the time when wheat crop is harvested. And the farmers, they celebrate after selling the crop. And however, this is a poem on one particular Vaisakhi day in the year 1919. So in colonial India, the British government ordered a massacre where people who had gathered peacefully to celebrate Vaisakhi were murdered brutally by opening gunfire on them. And what would a woman poet have written about it if she had experienced that massacre is something that I've tried to imagine through this poem. So my poem, A Poet on Baisakhi 1919. She is a poet and it is 1919. The news of the massacre is raw as winter wheat just before the golden steps in with fairy breath. She writes epistles to the sky that is now always a dark closed room. She swims in its fabric, but today the stars droop, eyes fixed on the blood at their feet. The soil is coarse and clods of shot out bones are scattered in the grass. When the clouds crack, she is already offering blood-dried jaggery to them. The inky fingertip is her offering to the white sky, even after it happened. The massacre. She is still praying. It should not happen. It should not happen. The blood between her thighs and her pen are lost that same day. And the same day the river changes course. The fireflies hide in the sand by its banks. It is three become one. Pen, woman, river. They flow on the rugged terrain. They fumble for sound. And then a flutter. They rise in waves for the cleansing rain to wash away the stray whiff of death. The next poem that I would like to recite is called Room. This poem is written about how my experience of my very room changed after I moved out of my parents' house after marrying. So every time I would go back to my room, it would be changed and I could never relate to it the same way. So I've tried to understand how space changes with time, personal space. Room. This room hasn't gathered dust as I thought it would. The serene walls ooze marble breath, slated in the slime of rainy memories, but the air, lustrous and polished, hangs about it as before. The cupboards say that I had left. The clinging jargon on their doors drags old words through the mind. I can smell memories in the curtains, and the slow music playing under darkened eyelids is different. Someone has arranged dead butterflies on a wall. They look sinister. Stuck corpses gathering dust dance. A mirror is broken. Almost it shows another face. As broken calls broken, a conversation trips through the cracks, falters and falls without an echo. Soon the sun will set on it again, and ghosts will come alive in my lair, with their pillow talk and flushed faces in the mirror. Some lizard will stretch invisible antlers behind the lamp, looking for food. She lives here. I am a visitor. My old self has surrendered its robes and walks this pool naked. It plumbs the past. When it scampers out, it is golden, while I, who stand almost at the doorway, am silver. I shiver in the light of the risen moon. Walk through my aura. I left in this room that I could not lock, but this flower has bloomed again. In between the pages of memory, its sap sticks, while silverfish run through this roughly preserved flower. Thank you. Now I'm going to read a few poems from my book, Beyond Thorns. So the first poem in this book that I'm going to read today is a poem that was inspired by nature and how nature can be redemptive to the human soul. It says, "You do not walk alone. You do not walk alone, even though a sigh is trapped, beating against the warm leaf of your heart. Even as the sauntered lake falls into a deserted hollow, and its sandy bank is barren, even as the prairies sway without form or friend, and the old barns are sated with memories, even as the wilted flowers seem to droop towards eternity's cold gate, know that you are not alone. The moving sun across snowy hills and the twisted promises of dry trees, the paw prints walking still in the windswept acres of your heart, and the arms of the wind caressing the clear blue lake, the flowering ripples welcoming a tremor, and from the moving dawn skies, the birds calling to you are home." Another poem that I want to recite today is called "The Mango Tree." It is a poem that reflects on my experience as a diasporic in Canada. It's about a mango tree in my backyard back home in India, and how I have become disconnected from that tree. The mango tree. The tree is lost in its leaves, like the day is lost, every passing hour melting into dusk. Its branches stretch, over which green beads herald mangoes. Every day it plunges for salubrious ambrosia into the earth's raw heart. But despite all the mud rots, it fruits only every other year. As we were here looking at trees crouching under snowy stalks, trees that had shed old promises, the lone mango stood beside us, behind us, its whiff already at our napes, its arms burdened and unburdened many times, its dark soul heaved with secrets that we can no longer know, because we did not see it growing. Now, we cannot put our ears to it, to partake in its vibrant song, or to unfold its secret of soul once more. So proud are we of our promises to this new land, where snow clouds the insides of life and shiver and fret. I would now like to recite another poem, which is titled "A Conversation with God." I think I am an echo lost in a valley of sounds, crashing against the rocks, forever bearing bruises, floating here like solitary marble hearts in a saucer of light, always towards darkness. The rays pass through my glass self, like rain through the sky's breath, like the soul moving towards a song. I am an echo, hurled between rocky hands, I believe, but am I a prayer or a poem, or just a crack through which life falls and crashes into the soul? I wonder what the twittering birds on morning roofs say, because the world wears a great veil. It too speaks in the shadows, and it is okay not to understand. But I listen and listen again. A flood flows between my ears, and every gurgle is not the sound of sinking. There are days which burst at the hems of my eyes. Thank you.
This brings us to the end of tonight's event. Please remember that a recording of this event, along with other poetry nights and other events in the happening Multicultural Festival, will remain available on Facebook and YouTube channels of Muse Arts for future viewing. So please keep spreading the word and sharing these events with those who may be interested. Thanks to the festival director, Paula Gomez, festival coordinator, Paula Sofia Morales, Alex Oscuyano, Natalia Ruiz, and all the happening Multicultural Festival team who work tirelessly behind the scenes. Thanks to our featured poets for joining the lineup. Thanks to all who spread the word. And thank you, our audience, for joining us virtually. Have a great night or day, depending on where you are.